Happy New Year, everyone. It is 2 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon, which means you're tuning in to Cannabis Legalization News. I'm producer Lauren. Today we're going to be speaking with Jared Moffat, the campaign coordinator at Marijuana Policy Project. He's going to tell us a little bit about what's going to be happening in 2020. But first, we do have to get into a little bit of cannabis legalization news. So what's going on, guys? Illinois has a reason to celebrate today, right?
Oh, it's legal.
Oh, shit.
Totally legal. Oh, of course, that's still medical. That's been legal for me for like 2.5 years. But boy, isn't that amazing. So we're going to see some shit today, I'm sure. Like lines, big lines.
Oh, God.
Were there lines 5 years, 6 years ago? What year? It was around the first of the year that Washington State started too, right?
Yeah, Seattle had I think with Cannabis City was the first one. And it did, of course, the big hoopla. There was a guy, Magical Butter guy was there. He had his green hair. They're giving away shit. You know, they had a big bus there. It's a big hoodoo. But, you know, after the first week, you're kind of like, all right, I'm just going to go to the store.
Well, I hope that's what it's going to be. I'm just going to go to the store simply because of supply constraints and concerns that we have. Hopefully there's plenty of flowers growing in the state of Illinois. And there are, you know, I mean, the black market's probably not all that worried about the first few months.
No.
You know, shortages, $100 eighths. That's the magic thing. What will an eighth of good weed from like Verano or something run you after you pay all the taxes?
No, that's the question, dude. Like, you know, and then what is your bottom shelf weed going to be priced at? And
well, there really isn't any bottom shelf weed. That's the thing. Like for my medical stuff, I was just told that I need to check out Ares again because it's an aeroponic grower out of Arizona that I tried months ago. And I'm like, this is bad, or, you know, not the best for medical grade cannabis. But then somebody told me I should check them out again. Their birthday cake evidently is supposed to be on fire. And so sure, I will. But those ones are like $50 eighths. That's like the cheapest eighth of high quality that you can get. $60 eighths, $59 eighths is like the more expensive version of the eighths for medical grade with the taxes, downstate prices, because they like keep you married to your dispensary. So I can't shop prices around, or like I can't take my medical card into a different dispensary, that type of stuff. I'm not sure. Do you guys still have medical weed out there, man?
Yeah, no, it's not as thriving as it was, but we still have medical. There's still one market that we have that I know of. So it just takes me to go out there and show my medical record, and I'll get a $100 script. And that can go. I mean, the tax-free thing is a nice thing. And when I say by low quality weed, I mean as far as like proper purging, you know, nutrients. You know, some of these cats are rushing. You know, that's once this happens, once it kicks in, you guys, you know, trying to ramp up bigger flower, a better, you know, production. And at the end, as a consumer, as an asthmatic, I notice it because some shit will make me breathe hard and other stuff will make me be like, okay, that was good stuff. Like I feel cleansed. It was like the sage.
Like craft weed in about a year where you know, it's just going to be easier for them to take on, at least and command a higher price point because of the higher quality that they should be able to deliver over like the larger producers that are trying to go for weight and volume, you know?
Well, I think that you'll find is as the consumer becomes more enlightened. Again, this is something we've been fighting here in Washington when it comes to like consumer awareness. You know, it's not just about highest THC. You know, it's about terpenes. You know, there's a whole cannabinoid profile here. But
yeah, that's the problem with the THC percentages. It just creates more of misconceptions again. But you know, the stuff that tastes good and that makes you feel good, you know, find that out. And I think that's really going to be important. And that was one of the things that I was working on furiously recently as I'm getting these. Hopefully, by the time this airs, totally is New Year's Day. Totally. Yeah. By the time this airs, I'm done and I'm submitted and I'm able to enjoy my New Year's. But then, you know, we're drafting so many of these exhibits and applications that go into it. And they talk about how much education you're going to make a part of your dispensing from not only on your side, you know, the dispensing agents, the employees themselves, but as to the customers facing side. So you can educate and explain all that stuff to them. So, you know, with some of these plans that you're putting out there, by the time, you know, the customer is educated, hopefully Illinois is just full of snooty weed snobs. It'd be great. Like, you know, oh, sorry, you have to do this, this, and this. That would be great.
Yeah, like is that organically grown? Did that plant, was it raised with kind neighbors and there was the oxygen being
I'm sorry,
observed?
how much Reiki was performed on these buds?
I'm just saying that's the Northwest shit right there. But the whole thing is like, yeah, as the consumer becomes more enlightened and more aware, then I think the product becomes better too. I think that's why we had it so good here when it was medical, because there was just so many people growing it, and that you had so many varieties. Small people had a chance. And so if Miggy's home grow, and if I can only make one plant, but people loved it, I made some freaking money out of it.
Can't we get like a licensing agreement for that? Can't we like get Miggy's home grow and make that as to like just a hybrid strain and start selling that shit? And then you could hype it on here.
Right. But it goes back to branding too, right? And culture and who gives a fuck about any of this. It's like Jack Hare. How long did it take for that man to be a name, and how many kids don't know who he is?
Oh, I think everybody, well, I'm not going to say everybody. People that have smoked his strain know who he is. They might not know like the guy behind the guy though, but we got the same birthday.
Right on. I'm just saying, everybody thinks Jack Hare's a sativa. They don't know him as a man that actually preferred indicas.
Really?
Yeah.
And ever smoked his own strain?
Yeah, well, I know I'm friends with Joy Graves, who was his caretaker in the ends of his days, and she tells me he did smoke it, but he didn't like it, and just being an indica guy. So, it's funny how the history writes itself after we're gone, right? Like, who knows what position you and I will be in when fucking 20 years ago,
Yeah. But then everybody believes in the truth. It's this wonderful, like little, isn't that fun that everybody gets it all wrong, but yet they believe in veracity.
Huh. I think the internet brought that to us, dude.
I think the internet did the exact opposite. We actually have a lot more instances of like data as opposed to back in the day when it was just like, she's a witch, burn her.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's kind of hard, right? You can look at both ends. Like, one, prohibition, the internet's helped fight against that very well because you can't hide truth. Or if you're manipulating
truth in the middle of bullshit, I mean, that's the nice thing about that nothing means anything. But that's like that goes back to 1981, Simulation, the Simulacrum by Jean Baudrillard. I think I'm pronouncing that name right. My French isn't all that great.
Better than mine, bro.
Yeah. All right. Cool. So hey, did you enjoy your New Year's?
Oh, I am totally enjoying it. Not hungover.
Totally stoked. Not hungover at all. Seahawks won, right? Yeah.
Well, actually, yeah. Well, let's just get that out of the air then. It's almost been a year since we've been talking, man. Like, I can't believe it's been a year.
We're going on 11 months. We're going on 11 months and over 10x in growth. I don't know if we'll be able to go another 10x next year, but the one thing that I noticed, and that's one of the reasons why the news is titled what it is now, because these types of titles are much more likely to trend. So like when I did that more piece really quick, so you have to find out what's trending and then do something really, really fast about that. And so like when the Illinois released those last minute updates, and then you do just a quick thing on that, and it's a relevant searchable topic that spikes up. Those really just all of a sudden take off the number of subscribers. I mean, they just start bouncing. We put on like 600 subscribers last month.
Well, I think you and we've just been carrying a conversation through and through and true for fucking 10 years at least now. I mean, that's just online. And it's only a matter of time before our base gets bigger. When I used to contribute to the website that we don't talk about no more, we hit a peak of 1 million fucking hits a month, and I didn't know we were doing that. I'm just a guy who likes to smoke weed and writes articles and wants to change.
It's probably like your most basic shit. And so that's like SEO sometimes you'll have like 4 articles that might be worth half the traffic. And a lot of those articles might just be simple how-tos that correlate to the amount of search terms. So like, if there's something's being searched a whole bunch of times, you'll grow up to whenever that saturation is. But yeah, I mean, I think it was weednews.co that you were writing at, and you showed me some of like their top 10 ranks. And I'm like, okay, well, yeah, I see what you're doing here. We could respawn that content and then make, a redirect from what's currently still probably being ranked on weednews.co. But the internet is interesting, and I'm thrilled that I actually learned how it works. And I have no idea how much larger this can get if we continue to use SEO policies and procedures.
Well, I think with SEO, we're beyond that though, because you and I have been doing this. Like, it's not just SEO, but it's also reputation, right? Like, we haven't been doing this because we been paying our bills with it. So,
well, I am
well,
paying my bills,
motherfucker.
but like
yeah.
I didn't. Yeah, well, come on, overnight success, 10 years in the making. Like this thing, like I didn't pay my bills with that. You know that was just fun and helping people understand how much truth that there is in this plant that is just totally whitewashed over the past 80 years. And what do you think? So wild speculation. It's 2020. Safe Banking Act, that's going to pass. What do you think? Schedule 1, is it done?
I think we will pass. I think it's a matter still of this. We're in this right now, this cloud of politics, right? Like,
yeah,
even if it makes it through,
election in November,
what president will sign it at that point? Who's going to be
Trump will sign it.
Come on. I know, and we all know this impeachment.
Will he though, or will he just say that he'll sign it because it's popular, knowing it'll never get to his desk?
Well, Biden and Bloomberg flipped, in a week.
Did they? Biden and Bloomberg? I don't know. I'm not excited for them.
Hey, but who else is paying the bills? I think our guest is paying his bills this way.
I hope our guest is paying the bill. Actually, you know what? If we're going to have a discussion, a long and interesting discussion about 2020 and what's going to be happening on a federal level in cannabis, we have just the best guest for it. It's a what do they call that? The bowl games. It's a bowl game of guests that we have.
Yeah, absolutely. Jared, what's going on?
Hey guys, not much. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about Marijuana Policy Project?
Yeah, absolutely. So MPP's been around since the 1990s, 1995, and we've been working to change marijuana laws in that time period. And I think that we've had a lot of success. The majority of the legalization laws that are on the books right now, we played a significant role, if not a leadership role, in those campaigns. And we continue to, change state laws and lobby at the federal level too. So it's a pretty exciting time to be with the group. I joined in 2014, so I joined at probably the most exciting point and have continued to ride the wave. But it's just a great organization to be part of that has a long history of making real change. So I'm proud to be part of it.
Jared, would you consider yourself like a lobbyist, or how would you characterize your position?
Previously for a number of years, and the way I got started with MPP is I was initially part of a student group called Students for Sensible Drug Policy while I was in school in Providence, Rhode Island. And I worked to organize students and others around the decriminalization law that ended up passing in 2012 and enacted in 2013. And so, as a student, I kind of started building a coalition within the state of Rhode Island to pass full adult use legalization. Founded a group that still kind of exists, Regulate Rhode Island. And basically that work, I was already working with MPP at the time, but they sort of saw what I was doing and decided they needed to bring me on board. And so while I was mostly focused on Rhode Island, I was registered as a lobbyist there. But I would say that my role was more of a community organizer. I certainly did, go lobby legislators, but mainly my work focused on, bringing groups into the coalition, getting grassroots, legislative calls for change. So, letter writing, canvassing in districts and so on. So I wasn't the traditional, sort of high lobbyist, but technically I filed lobbyist reports for Rhode Island. Now
so
I'm working.
Were totally a lobbyist then. I mean, if you're filing the reports, you're a lobbyist.
Yes.
So was that your first foray into organizing and for legislative action? It
was, yeah, definitely. That's how I learned pretty much everything I know about organizing at this point, was being first part of SSDP, the student group, and then Regulate Rhode Island and MPP.
So then why was it the cannabis plant that called you out?
Well, I think that, to be honest, I was interested in the drug war as a whole. And, that's why I joined SSDP, because, they were really talking about the whole war on drugs. And, personally, I'm not speaking for MPP when I say this, but I think that all drugs should be legal and regulated in some fashion, not necessarily
not like, so you don't support the criminalization of substances.
That's right. And, I think the arguments for other drugs are apply just as well to marijuana, frankly. I mean, when we talk about...
I will make a distinction between the regulation of heroin and marijuana being the same, but I still think that heroin should be like regulated. You know, there shouldn't be I don't necessarily want a heroin market out there.
Right.
There's no meth fest.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that too, to be clear. I'm saying that there should be a legal way to access drugs, because that's the only way you get rid of prohibition, but that doesn't mean we should regulate all drugs the same way. I certainly agree with you on that. But anyway, so I mean, I think I got started because I felt that drug policy was an issue that frankly was seeing progress, whereas a lot of other issues haven't made as much progress. And that's partly because you can make arguments from a libertarian or conservative point of view, and you can make it from a more progressive or leftist point of view. And that excited me as a student because I wanted to be part of something that was making progress. And yeah, so basically just working in SSDP, you know, we worked on this decriminalization campaign in Rhode Island, and then MPP offered me a job after I graduated. So that's sort of why I went more into the marijuana or cannabis space. But, you know, to me, it's a part of a larger movement.
Yeah, no, do people ask you, I know, like, from my perspective as a guy who's been, like, cheerleading pot for, you know, over 20 years, I never thought your position would be, like, ever happening. Hell, I didn't even think Tom's position would ever be happening. Like, people who are grown-ups getting paid to champion cannabis. And
yeah.
My question to you is, do other people ask you, like, hey, how can I get to the industry? What do you suggest? Like, for me, I think, like, in my position, just in the media side of things, it's volunteerism. It's all about volunteering. That's how you get your name out, and then you show that you put your money where your mouth is. What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I mean, and frankly, I put in several years of volunteer work, you know, unpaid. And I did it because I cared about the issue. And I think that, you know, MPP hired me because they saw how dedicated I was. So I think it doesn't have to be, frankly, I think, you know, what we look for when we find local partners in other states to work on ballot initiatives, they don't necessarily have to have a background in marijuana specifically, but we want to see that they have a background in organizing. They know how to run campaigns. So I would say that anyone who's looking to get involved in the advocacy side, you know, get involved with any type of political activism. You know, doing that can be helpful. People do ask me all the time how to get into the industry. And frankly, I don't know how to get into the industry. I don't really ever want to be in the industry. That's just not my cup of tea. I'm more of a political activist type. But yeah, I think it makes sense to, you know, you got to network, you got to sort of put yourself out there. And I've seen other people do that successfully. So that's my recommendation is, you know,
I don't know, man. I think you got a lot to bring to the industry, like that type of organizational skills and planning and orchestration. That is a skill. I mean, like, you know, the industry might have a lot of sales pitches and, you know, bullshit artists, but if somebody can actually put together an operation there and carry it out, because a political action that takes a lot. You know, I mean, you're talking about signing petitions. You're talking about drafting petitions. Have you ever drafted legislation in and of itself?
Yeah, definitely. And I, you know, review ballot petition language. I've written several pieces of legislation in Rhode Island, and yeah, I mean, thank you. That's kind of you to say. It's not so much. I think I could work in the industry. I just, again, personally, it's not where my heart is. Maybe I'll change as I get older and want to make more money, but for now, I'm willing to do what I'm doing, and I love it.
So then, where do you see 2020 then? Because if you're there in the front lines and in the trenches of making political change in the cannabis space with MPP, what's on the agenda for 2020?
Yeah, well, we've got a lot of several ballot initiatives in the works. I'm already pretty heavily involved in the Nebraska medical marijuana campaign. And the Montana adult use legalization campaign is getting fired up. So we're working on that. There's a few others, excuse me, not Montana, South Dakota. South Dakota we're working on. But there are a few other states that, you know, are in the works. I can't really, it's not official yet, so I don't want to, you know, give it away. But yeah, so we're looking to probably change laws in total, not necessarily what MPP is doing, but probably about 6 or 7 states I could see passing significant reform, and the majority of those are going to be adult use legalization. Most folks know about.
Let's go over them. Let's go down the 6 list. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Well, so Arizona's got, I think, a very good shot. and the industry folks are kind of supporting that, and that's great to see. I think they're probably going to pass.
Nice.
Ohio seems very likely. Again, it seems to be kind of an industry-driven process at this point, but that helps because it takes a lot of money to put these things on the ballot. Florida, looks promising, but it's tougher because you have to get 60% of the vote in Florida,
right,
which is more challenging. Mississippi, which is where I grew up, I'm very proud to say, is going to have.
Do you actually like to smoke weed?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so like you came out of Mississippi, where like the only weed that I know that's grown there is the stuff from the federal government, which sucks. I mean, like, is there a culture down there for cannabis?
I think it's actually the least cannabis the fewest cannabis consumers per capita of any state.
Sounds awful.
But there's a culture there. I know the Ocean Shores mayor, he stood up for medical cannabis. I went to school in Biloxi for Navy,
cool.
so yeah. I'm intimate with that area. But yeah, awesome. Ocean Shores, that guy stepped up. I mean, but that Mississippi's definitely scary though. I mean, let's be real.
Yeah. So, but it's exciting, and I think it's got a very good chance of passing in Mississippi, and that's going to send I think a ripple effect through the rest of the southern states, and
we had somebody on from Arizona that was mentioning that they're trying to organize a ballot initiative there. And Oklahoma, I mean, that thing broke so wide open in medical. I wonder how quick that's going to go before it's full on adult use.
Yeah, well, wait and see. That's all I can say on that. But so Arkansas, there's an activist-driven initiative that's happening. I don't know that they're going to be able to get enough signatures to qualify, but that would be really exciting. It's an expungement law and then an adult use legalization petition.
Right.
Then you've got Idaho that's working on medical marijuana. I think I mentioned Nebraska already. And so I mean, I'm losing count at this point. It's going to be a very busy year.
There's a lot of dominoes in this fight, right?
Totally. Yeah.
They all start falling pretty quickly, though, toward the end, which is nice. And the thing that we could then talk about is something that might further the wind in the sails of these initiatives would be federal legislative change. So what do you think is going to happen in 2020 with the two main bills that have, Safe Banking Act already passed Congress and the MORE Act made it out of the Judiciary Committee?
Right. Well, I'm not sure. Has the Safe Banking Act passed the Senate?
No. When I said Congress, I meant the House.
Oh, yeah.
Traditional usage.
I think that's the big question mark that, frankly, I don't think anyone knows for sure. Obviously, I think the Banking Act has the best chance of passing the Senate and, the president signing it. But I also just sort of feel like with everything going on in the political world right now with impeachment and the primary elections, I kind of am skeptical that anything's going to pass of any significance. So I certainly hope so. The MORE Act, I don't see how that passes the Senate. I mean, I support it. I think it's a great piece of legislation, but with the Republicans in control, there's no way they're going to pass it.
Why do you think that won't pass? Is it because of the reparation parts?
Yeah, I think they're just not going to go along with legalization if it's framed as a racial justice issue, if it's framed as a social justice issue. They want to talk about money and business and entrepreneurship and that type of thing. So it would be a win for the Democrats in such a way that Republicans just don't want to give that to them.
That's a shame. I love how the reason why you said you came in is because you saw the arguments for both sides, left and right, for legalization. Yeah. It just seems to me that we have this trouble putting that one sentence together that both sides go, oh, fuck yeah, you're right. This is the best choice for Americans.
Like they're really professionals at just arguing at one another, and that's it.
Seriously.
And doing it for hundreds of years.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I mean, even watching the impeachment argument where one side was on the other side, and then we're just like, it was a stalemate. And it's like, can somebody just open their mind for a little bit, digest what the other one's saying, and then say, okay, this is why I don't agree with that. You know what I mean?
Even when they both agree, they don't agree. It's like,
yes,
it should be legal. It should be legal, but not like that. Like, okay. So we agree, but we aren't going to do it because we don't agree how. Great.
Right. Yeah. And frankly, that is a lesson I learned in Rhode Island as well, because, we've been trying to pass a bill for, I guess going on about 8 years now. And it's not that we don't have the support in the legislature. We know that, based on our sort of lip count and talking with legislators, that if they simply put it to a vote on the floor of both the House and Senate in Rhode Island, it would pass because we have enough support. The challenge is, where does it rank on the list of priorities for the Speaker of the House? How does it, who's in the club of pushing for it? And are those people in the club well liked by, the powers that be?
And that's one of the reasons, you're absolutely right. And that's one of the reasons why on the show we do mention about how Illinois, while it's the 11th state, is really the first because it did it legislatively. So it had to do all these backroom deals, House and Senate pass reconciliations, get it through, get it signed, and then, the rulemaking as well. And so we'll talk about how sometimes when these ballot initiatives go through and then the legislature's like, they can screw with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Legislative wins are so much harder than ballot wins. So we're learning that. I mean, we've learned it, but so I think it's the same thing at the level of Congress. Is it's not necessarily that we haven't won the war of ideas. I think we have, but that's a totally different thing than getting legislation passed.
No, that's a great concept of war of ideas. I mean, this, like I tell Tom over and over, because here in Washington we're fighting for home grow just to make legalization right. Yeah. And I just learned more and more how non-sexy politics are. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is the most driest, most
it's worse than the public comment period.
I just
closed for the USDA on hemp.
How do we get shit done? It's mostly what I come by when I walk away with. How do we get shit done? But and I know you guys were saying how like the Illinois is the real legalization, but I think either way you find ways to manipulate the process, right? Like here they gave us legalization, but no home grow. And then the next bill that came in was the Patient Safe Act, and that just killed medical for the most part. Like, stores were closed, shops were closed because of it, because they were integrating the two programs in one, and that just wasn't a thing.
As they say, all politics is local.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah. But Jared, go ahead, bro.
Oh, well, I was just going to say it's a good point to make that there's still a lot of battles to fight even after laws pass. I mean, we see the implementation being an issue a lot of times as well.
Yeah, I think we're going to have plenty of future episodes in 2020 of cannabis legalization news. But because this is the least settled the cannabis laws have been in any of our lifetimes. Like, if there's one law that is so quickly evolving, it's the cannabis laws. The federal level is even changing really, really quickly, especially if they defund the rest of cannabis from the war on drugs. I mean, currently, and we're going to have to see what the budget did this time. Did they expand it from just the medical prohibition on the Department of Justice to all cannabis at a state level? I'm not sure. I'm going to have to check the budget on that.
I think they took that out. Yeah, in the Senate, they took it out.
So it's just still the medical restriction?
Yep. Unfortunately. So,
but how many other products are out there where I can leave my legal state, go to another state, and now I'm a criminal federally too? How many other products are there? I mean, I know pit bulls are banned in like California, but I mean, like, what else is banned?
Well, I mean, drugs. I mean, I guess that's it. I mean, there's probably drugs,
Right. Well, I think alcohol can be tricky. Like, I know you can't ship certain, to certain states, but yeah, it's a pretty unique situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying that it raises all these federal issues and it raises all these legal questions, none of which are settled. And so, like, the most settled aspect of the cannabis laws are probably at the federal level. And then if they would have had that, I mean, the only small exception they have is in that budget where they say, don't give any money to this war for these guys. But then they didn't expand it to protect, tacitly at least giving the green light to the cannabis companies for 2020 and expand that, because now Illinois is going to be, with its ass out in the winds going like, hey, come at me, bro, because there's allocation out there for the Department of Justice to shut down the legal states. I mean, they could do it. They haven't. I mean, you're going to probably continue to see more banking, more business going into it, because the Trump administration has said that they're going to allow it and they aren't going to stop any type of, Well,
I think this is the one now law-ish type issue that, because got all these people talking rhetoric like, well, if Trump gets impeached, it's going to be a fucking civil war bullshit. That's still stupid. But if states were to invade, or if the federal were to invade states and say you need to stop business now, I think then you might see an extra revolution, though. I mean,
yeah, but there's no money for it. I mean, there's no money. There's no political appetite. It's one of the most
right.
It's so popular. Both sides agree on it. They just don't agree on how.
Yes,
it's just fucking insane. But and I think back to Jared's point of him as far as a lobbyist in the market, because as I said, I was doing research on you earlier, bro, and you're a pretty badass, dude. I mean, for being so young and being involved, and I was watching your interviews with the as you're fighting for Rhode Island's legalization. You were doing interviews with a national bank, some bank that some bank has a channel there.
I'm not remembering that, but
well, I just thought it was interesting that you chose that avenue to do interview, because I mean it makes sense that any bank wants to be involved in policy and all this other shit coming up. That why not have the cannabis guy on? I mean that in itself is the marketing approach that I think you added to what probably the campaigns, right? That's what you do, campaigns.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. There's no one I won't talk to, and I think that I even got environmental groups to sign on, onto our coalition, because prohibition basically displaces cultivation into public lands and national parks, and ends up when you don't have regulation, it creates a less environmentally friendly environment. So I mean, there's all kinds of people that are touched by these issues, and that was another fun part of getting into this movement, was realizing that I could go to almost any other issue group and say, look, I bet this touches you in some way, and there's a reason you should be involved.
Yeah, the Illinois industry is replete with environmental well, they aren't concessions, but there's environmental hoops that they want you to do. They want you to be as green and as carbon neutral and have such a low impact on the environment as possible. So it's the environmental thing to do is to legalize cannabis.
What's the packaging requirements, Tom, for Illinois?
What's that?
What's the packaging requirements?
Oh, they're probably very similar to the Washington State and California ones now, where when it leaves the cultivation facility, it's already shrink wrapped, pre-weighed, pre-tested, labeled, everything like that, child-proof. So when the dispensaries buy it here in Illinois, they buy it just as it left the manufacturer. So they aren't buying bulk flower and breaking it up or creating any pre-rolls, nothing like that.
I just think that the packaging issue itself is an environment issue.
Sure.
I have a drawer full of about 60 fucking jars, just in a month's use. I'm just trying to guesstimate how much damage I'm doing to the world, or what I could do with the extra jars. Like, I have really nice glass jars, and then I question, like, okay, in this glass jar, how much did it cost for that glass jar? The labeling on top of that jar, how much was this weed fucking really worth? Because then they're also marking it up 25% for the state income tax. So besides the packaging and the taxing, this fucking gram cost them $2, and I'm paying fucking $10 for it. It's a little out of balance right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think that's why home grow is so important, because home grow is kind of the ultimate check on, taxes and any type of, price, ridiculous price increases without recreating prohibition. So home grow is really, really key.
Yeah.
Is MPP doing anything? I'm sorry.
I would just say that's why I'm glad that Illinois has it for their medical patients, because it's really important when you're talking about access and patient access, because like $50-$60 eighths, that adds up when you need your medicine. So if you had the ability to grow your own, you can bring your price point down substantially.
Consumer awareness too. I mean, that way oh shit, it takes 3 months to grow the kind of weed I want, so I can't be in a rush when I'm gonna go buy this or whatever. I just the awareness for the consumer is huge, and we miss out with the home grow. Jared, is MPP doing anything through the home grow policy? I know here in Washington, you guys are more than welcome to reach out to 2 old guys that I know who are running the initiative.
We're kind of fighting a battle in Rhode Island, because they've been trying for years to take away home grow for the medical program in Rhode Island. And certainly when we write initiatives or support campaigns, we do everything we can to ensure that home grow is part of any medical marijuana legalization initiative. We're a little stretched thin, to be honest with you. I mean, we don't have enough staff to be really having a campaign in every state. So I don't know if we can specifically help, but if there are small ways, definitely let me know. And we can send emails. We can do what we can that's kind of low maintenance.
Okay.
But yeah, we definitely support home grow, and sometimes it's a political reality that it's not us saying we don't want this. It's just this isn't going to pass if home grow is in it, and that's that's just the reality of politics. Sometimes you have to compromise. So.
It certainly is.
Like we were talking in the green room, you were saying how in Rhode Island it's a Democrat-run state, but it's very tightly conservative. Here in Washington, you would think our super liberal hippie people's Democratic. That's actually the committees where it's getting stalled at, is in our Democratic-led fucking joint committees. It's like, how does that work? You're supposed to be on the side of good. Let it go through.
Did you wet their beaks enough?
That's the problem.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. They didn't want any trouble. They just wanted a bribe, man.
It's not a bribe. It's a campaign contribution.
No, it's bribe. But quid pro quo. Those never happen in government, ever. Yeah.
Just do me a favor, please.
Yeah. Everybody just does favors for each other. They're so helpful.
It's kind.
Yeah. Well, again, that's what we run into in Rhode Island a lot. Is frankly, it's just there's a lot of cronyism. There's a lot of corruption, and again, the public is behind legalization. The problem is there's a push to sort of consolidate the market, in the hands of just a few people.
Oh, we don't have that. At least they.
Yeah, it doesn't happen anywhere else.
The presence of it has tried to be mitigated in our state's legislation, at least with the way that it's drafted. They've tried to lock people out, so it's fairly decentralized, and you can't control more than 2% of the licenses for dispensing, or you can't control more than about 2% of the licenses for the craft grows. But then it's going to be interesting to see, okay, what about the management companies that are working these places? They don't necessarily own the license, but they're taking the cash flow. We'll see.
Sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They can be very creative in their methods.
Oh, don't you think? I know that. What do they do all day? That's a very interesting proposition you guys put there. Let me wrap my head around this one.
Yeah.
Hey, I got a hypothetical for you guys. I mean, I know we're always fearing big marijuana, whatever, right? And that's Jared and I were talking about making fun of Sam Sabat's group because they're always like, no big marijuana, but then they're like, but we want pharmaceutical to be in charge of it, right?
Right.
But let me address here.
Sam was the group that didn't want marijuana at all. It was like smart approaches to marijuana was what it stood for.
Right. Yeah, it's the irony of his name, right? It sounds like it's a good fucking deal, but it's actually and I think, didn't Sam come out at the same time MPP? Because I was always confused about groups at one time. Like, I didn't know who was a good group and who wasn't for a while.
Yeah. Well, MPP's been around since '95. Sam, I think, formed in 2013, right after Colorado and Washington passed. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would love to see the checks. I would love to see their donors just to be like, oh no. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Where's the Snowden people when we need them? Who is funding the marijuana prohibition out there?
Seriously. Yeah. But part of the reason why I bring all this big marijuana stuff up, though, what was the state that had the NSYNC guy that they were going to do a monopoly? What was that?
Oh, Ohio.
Yeah. So imagine these assholes, all these people with money, all the big names, Mad Men. Who's the one from Florida? True Leaf. The one from Chicago. GL. Is that yours?
Oh, there's a Cresco Labs in Chicago that's fairly large.
But I mean, imagine these guys dumped all their money into all these prohibition states now and became big marijuana. Right now, it's legal.
That's what I would do. I mean, when that Arkansas lady was on, I'd be like, $750,000 sounds like a very interesting expansion plan. Just buy the state. I mean, talk about emerging markets. That's one of the things that we do in my job. I'm looking, and so Jared, please tell me exactly where I should start locating and researching, and then you pick it apart. You understand how you do the application and get your boots on the ground in there. And then if you could figure out, it'd be like, hey, we have this plan. How about you guys kick in this much? We'll make sure you get these many licenses. I mean, and then, those are the people that have the cash flows. I mean, granted, they have the IRC 280E kicking them, but they have the cash flow to be able to allocate that. And people are just more likely to buy weed than they are to give to MPP. Let's be honest.
Right. Yeah. But my thinking is, if there was more people, all this big marijuana across the country takes over, just supposedly next week, that means less people in jail, right? And that means more opportunities for the lower guy eventually, because big marijuana doesn't want to go to jail. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, we don't really take a strictly kind of purist position. Maybe. I think I understand, and I think most of the folks that work at MPP, don't like to see things like what we saw in Ohio in 2015. This just sort of blatant
grab of monopolizing essentially the market, that's just bad policy. And so our job isn't just to advocate for legalization, period. We want to advocate for good policies, so good legalization policies. But at the same time, you know, a lot of these ballot initiatives some of them take millions of dollars to fund. And so how do you get that? I mean, you can try to do small dollar donations, and it doesn't typically work.
I mean, that is marketing 101. Where is my dollar going to do the most good? And very often it's buying off the congressman. And so, like, if you can literally buy a state and open your doors there, why aren't people doing this? Yeah. Well, by people, I mean cannabis companies.
Well, look, I got to say, you know, MPP, I think we all, before legalization was real, had this kind of idea that, hey, once we get a few markets set up, this is going to be great because we create this virtuous circle where, you know, the industry is making money. They give us money to do advocacy. We legalize in more states and the dominoes will fall. But what we've actually seen is the industry is often very reticent to support us because I mean, you guys probably know this, but it's frustrating because they're looking at their competition, right? And they're saying, well, I could put $500,000 into this campaign, or I could put $500,000 into, you know, getting 2 more licenses. And if I don't do that, my competitor is going to do that. So it actually, you know, we're in kind of a difficult spot where the philanthropists have sort of said, look, guys, you have an industry now. Why do you need our money? We're going to move on to other things. And the industry's like, hold on, why are you coming to me? What about my competitor? So, you know, we're still making it, but it's, you know, a lot of people think that we're just flush with cash, and that's not the case.
Why don't you guys just start buying your own licenses?
Well, we're a nonprofit, right? You know, we're
a lot of cannabis licenses are nonprofits.
It's just, no, I hear you. It's just not, it's not our wheelhouse. I mean, what we do is we specialize in lobbying and running campaigns. And so I guess it's an idea. Maybe I'll bring it up with the board and see what people think. But
they'll be like, what kind of idiot told you that? You're like, sorry, I was marketing for the company.
Yeah.
But you know, that's a problem with the cannabis industry, right? There's doing the right thing doesn't fucking pay the bills. You know, that's the unfortunate part here.
Yeah.
I mean, Tom and I, we've been doing this for 10 years, just online, writing, blogging, doing stupid shit, not seeking revenue, not seeking anything. And eventually you become.
I realized that it was legitimately a job. Like, you know, because back when I was writing that book, there was no such thing as a cannabis lawyer in Illinois in 2010. That didn't exist until last year.
And if you're an advocate, you're a scumbag. I mean,
no, it was under a fake name, you know?
Yeah, you got to hide.
Right.
Yeah.
We've come a long way.
10 years.
Yeah, a lot has changed. This has been the decade of cannabis for sure.
Oh, just wait for this next decade. I mean, like, we're teeing that up pretty nice.
2020.
It'd be interesting to see how hemp shakes out, though. That's going to be something cool to see in 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Is MPP involved in any of the policy for hemp and all that?
A little bit, but not too much. I know we had one guy who was working closely with the USDA and giving feedback on some of the regulations. I don't know exactly how close he was, but I know he was working on that. It's usually not something we put a ton of focus into, but you know, when obviously it comes up, and we want to make sure that, you know, hemp is a viable industry. I mean, it's a tragedy that our country used to have, you know, a hemp industry that was the envy of the world, and we threw all that away. But hopefully we can rebuild it.
Yeah, but we changed the word to marijuana, and then we wrote all these phony newspaper articles, and then we made it really difficult for certain people to vote.
Yep, pretty tragic story.
It is, but that's one of the things that I enjoyed when I first got into like cannabis advocacy, learning how much bullshit there was, and it's just shocking the amount of, and it's still there, and so bullshit, just garbage that they make up, can literally create crimes, criminals. I mean, and that's the problem. Like the harm and the side effects are very real, but the whole reason for the law is complete and utter bullshit.
Yeah,
still there.
And you look at like other countries. You know, we exported
war
on drugs around the world.
Yeah,
and you look at like the Philippines right now, and they're literally executing people vigilante style because they use marijuana. I mean, we bear a lot of responsibility for that, because I don't think the Philippines would have come up with these, you know, crazy policies and wars on their own. Yeah, now we're trying to put the cat in the bag, back in the bag, so to speak. Yeah. But the damage is largely done. So, but it's good. You know, we got to start somewhere and rebuild. And I think it's, you know, great for the world that the United States is starting to see, you know, legalization.
Yeah, that's right. And we exported this prohibition, and we'll be the first ones to undo it and capitalize on it as well. I hope that the United States is not that duplicit, but then again,
well, we're
complicit in the United States.
Yeah. Even with our own citizens, we're complicit. I was telling Jared this morning about you know, Radical Russ over in
Mr. Russ Belville. I've heard of him. I don't know him personally, but yeah, I've heard of him.
Well, he posted a video this morning of, well, they're petitioning for medical. Cop is harassing him for some parking location. And the cop literally talks to him, what are you here for? He's like, we're petitioning for medical marijuana. And the cop says, well, it's my understanding that all the good stuff's already been taken out and put in pills. So, I mean, we got our own complacency here in the States, let alone.
When did law enforcement become law advisor?
I think around Bill Barr.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, it's an uphill battle, but I mean, we've made a lot of way.
Dude, we made a lot of way. And then that's the thing. If the rumors are true, in a decade, this industry will be about 4 times the size it is now. And it's going to be hitting like 20 billion, 25 billion, somewhere in there these next couple of years. I mean, if this becomes $100 billion a year industry, man, that could do a lot of influence, And then if let's hope that the continued demonization of opioid drugs and Xanax and Ambien and pretty much anything else that's a pill form continues unabated. That'd be great. Yeah.
Well, I think it's about proper drug education, right? Like Jared was saying earlier about all the drugs being legal. Who is it? Ecuador, where Portugal, where if you have like your addicts and you contain them, like here in Seattle, you know, we got tents popping up all over the place, and I honestly know it's part, you know, mental health and part drug addiction, right? Because who the fuck wants to live in the cold out in a tent in the middle of a highway?
Right.
So, I mean, we need to treat, you know, these as diseases, not as crimes. So, I agree with Jared, dude.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, you can hate whatever drug you want, but prohibiting it, putting it in an illicit market, certainly doesn't make it inaccessible or safer.
No. Yeah. It just exacerbates the problem.
Are we taking off, Lord?
Yep, it's about that time. Jared, thank you so much for joining us today. Where can we follow you guys and keep up with MPP?
Well, we've got mpp.org. I think we're at Marijuana Policy on Twitter. We've got a Facebook page, so that's the best place. And you can sign up for email alerts on our website, and you know, state specific if you want. And yeah, we do our best to keep folks informed.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, guys. As always, like and subscribe to keep up with all cannabis legalization news. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Cha-ching.